Terk Nassar smoothed down the front of his diplomatic uniform as the transport ship descended through the crystalline atmosphere of Nevi. Rainbow light fractured through the viewport, bathing his olive skin in prismatic colors. As Earth's newest ambassador to the Outer Rim planets, he'd visited many worlds, but this one made him pause in genuine wonder. "First time to Nevi?" asked the pilot, nodding Terk's expression. "Is it that obvious?" Terk smiled, still gazing at the towering spires below that seemed to grow organically from the planet's surface. "I've read about it, but seeing it." "Nothing compares," the pilot nodded. "The Crystal Kingdom, most beautiful world in the sector, shame about the trouble." Terk's smile faded. The trouble was precisely why he'd been sent here. Nevi, once the jewel of the Outer Rim, was fracturing, literally and figuratively. Rival houses were fighting for control, and the ruling monarch, Queen Selene, was struggling to maintain peace. Earth had interests in the region's stability, so here he was, tasked with a routine diplomatic mission. The ship touched down on a landing pad that glistened like mother of pearl. Terk gathered his thoughts and prepared to disembark. This was familiar territory for him: peace talks, negotiations, finding common ground between conflicting parties. He'd built his career on being the calming presence in the room. A small contingent awaited him at the base of the ramp. At their center stood a tall figure in flowing silver robes. As Terk approached, he realized it was a woman with skin the deep azure blue of Earth's oceans, marked with subtle patterns that seemed to shimmer as she moved. Her hair cascaded down her back in waves of midnight blue, adorned with tiny crystals that caught the light. "Ambassador Nassar," she spoke, her voice melodic yet formal. "I am Queen Selene, welcome to Nevi." Terk bowed respectfully, surprised to be greeted by the monarch herself. "Your Majesty, I'm honored. I wasn't expecting a royal welcome." "These are extraordinary times, Ambassador," she replied, her expression revealing little. "Please follow me." They processed through corridors of polished crystal, the walls singing faintly as they passed. Terk noticed the tense posture of the guards, the hushed whispers that fell silent as they approached. Something was different here, beyond the diplomatic briefing he'd received. The throne room was a cathedral of light, with soaring ceilings and walls that refracted the twin suns of Nevi into thousands of dancing beams. Queen Selene took her seat upon a throne that appeared carved from a single massive diamond, motioning for Terk to approach. "Ambassador, your arrival is timely," she said, her voice carrying easily in the vast space. "The peace of our world hangs by a thread." "I understand, Your Majesty. Earth stands ready to mediate between the factions and help establish." "No," the Queen interrupted gently. "You misunderstand. We don't need Earth's mediation. We need you." Terk paused, confused. "I'm not sure I follow." Before the Queen could respond, a side door opened, and a younger woman entered. Her skin was a lighter shade of blue than the Queen's, closer to the color of a summer sky, with luminescent patterns tracing her cheekbones and forehead. Her movements were graceful but determined as she approached. "Mother," she addressed the Queen with a respectful nod before turning to Terk. "Is this him, the human?" "Ambassador, this is my daughter, Princess Zora," Queen Selene said. "And yes, daughter, this is the ambassador from Earth." Princess Zora studied Terk with an intensity that made him shift uncomfortably. Her eyes were extraordinary, the irises a swirling violet that seemed to contain galaxies. "He will do," she announced after her assessment, turning back to her mother. "I beg your pardon," Terk managed, feeling increasingly as though he'd walked into the middle of a conversation. Queen Selene sighed, rising from her throne. "Ambassador Nassar, please join us in the private council chamber. There are matters we must discuss away from listening ears." The council chamber was smaller, but no less impressive, with a table that appeared to be a slice of crystal suspended in air. As they seated themselves, Terk noticed the princess continued to watch him with that same evaluating gaze. "Ambassador," the Queen began, "what do you know of Nevi's history?" "Your people settled here 5 centuries ago, developing a unique culture centered around the crystals native to this world," Terk recited from memory. "Your royal line has ruled since the founding, guided by what your people call the celestial grace, a form of advanced biotechnology, if I understand correctly." Princess Zora made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Is that what Earth thinks, that our power is technology?" The Queen placed a calming hand on her daughter's arm. "The celestial grace is indeed our birthright, Ambassador. It connects us to the very essence of Nevi, allows us to channel the energy of the crystals to maintain harmony. But in recent generations, that connection has weakened. The factions fighting for control, they sense this weakness, Terk surmised. Yes, Queen Selene nodded. And they are right to sense it. My power wanes. Without the full strength of the celestial grace, our world will tear itself apart. I understand the seriousness of your situation, Terk said carefully, but I'm still not clear on how I personally factor into this. Princess Zora leaned forward. There is something missing from our line, a connection that was lost generations ago when we settled here and became isolated. Our ancient texts speak of it. The grace reaches its full potential only when our bloodline is joined with one specific species. A dawning realization crept over Terk. Humans, he said quietly. Yes, Queen Selene confirmed. In the early days, there were unions between our peoples. Those rulers were the strongest, their connection to the grace unparalleled. But over time, contact with Earth diminished. The last human Nevihian union was 6 generations ago. Terk's diplomatic training hadn't prepared him for this. And you're telling me this because my mother is dying, Princess Zora said bluntly, ignoring the Queen's sharp look. She has held this world together through force of will alone, but her time grows short. I will soon take the throne, but my power is untested, incomplete. What my daughter is trying to say, Queen Selene interjected, is that we need to strengthen the royal line. We need to reforge the ancient connection. The implication hung in the air, crystal clear and utterly shocking. You want me to marry your daughter, Terk stated flatly, the words sounding surreal as he spoke them. Not just marry, Princess Zora corrected. Bond with, become my consort, help me unlock the full potential of the celestial grace. Terk stood, packing the chamber. This is far beyond my mandate. I'm a diplomat, not a royal consort. Ambassador, Queen Selene's voice softened. I understand your shock, but you must understand our desperation. The future of an entire world hangs in the balance. Why me specifically? Terk demanded. There are billions of humans, why not choose someone else? Because you're here, Princess Zora said simply. Because you were sent, and because I sense something in you, a resonance. The grace responds to your presence in a way I haven't felt before. Terk ran a hand through his dark hair, struggling to process what was being asked of him. His career, his life on Earth, his plans for the future, everything would change if he agreed. The factions will not wait much longer, Queen Selene added gravely. Already they gather their forces. If Nevi falls into civil war, the consequences will ripple throughout the sector. Earth's interests will not be spared. It was a masterful diplomatic maneuver, Terk had to admit, appeal to his sense of duty to the greater good. But this went far beyond duty. Princess Zora approached him, and for the first time he saw uncertainty in those cosmic eyes. I am not asking lightly, Ambassador. I am asking for my people, for their survival. And what about us? Terk asked softly. Would this be merely a political arrangement? At first, perhaps, she acknowledged. But the bond between ruler and consort is not just political on Nevi. It is spiritual, emotional, eventually personal. The grace connects souls, not just bloodlines. Terk looked between the queen and princess, these regal blue-skinned women asking him to alter the course of his life, to save a world he barely knew. I need time, he finally said, to consider. Of course, Queen Selene nodded, but not too much time, Ambassador. The stars wait for no one, not even royalty. As Terk was escorted to his quarters, his mind raced with the implications. The diplomatic mission he'd prepared for had transformed into something unimaginable. Marriage to an alien princess, becoming part of a royal lineage, using some mystical grace to save a planet. From his balcony, he watched as the twin suns began to set, casting the crystal city in hues of amber and rose. Beautiful and alien. 3 weeks had passed since Terk's arrival on Nevi, and the palace was abuzz with preparations. In the end, his decision hadn't been as difficult as he'd imagined. After witnessing firsthand the growing unrest in the crystal cities and seeing Queen Selene's deteriorating condition, he had contacted Earth Command with a heavily sanitized version of the situation. Their response had been predictably bureaucratic. Maintain diplomatic relations by any means necessary. If they had understood what any means necessary entailed in this case, Terk suspected their response might have been different. Now, standing at the window of his newly appointed royal chambers, Terk watched crystal craftsmen constructing an elaborate pavilion in the central courtyard. The bonding ceremony would take place at sunset, beneath the convergence of the twin suns, a time when, according to Nevihian tradition, the veil between the physical and spiritual realms was thinnest. Having second thoughts, the voice came from behind him, musical and slightly amused. Terk turned to find Princess Zora leaning against the doorframe, her sky-blue skin luminescent in the morning light. Despite their impending union, they had spent relatively little time alone together, their interactions carefully managed by court protocol. "Just first thoughts," Terk replied with a small smile. "I'm still catching up." Zora crossed the room to join him at the window. Up close, he could see the intricate patterns that dusted her skin, constellations of tiny luminescent dots that seemed to shift subtly as she moved. "The pavilion is beautiful," he commented. "It's traditional," she said. "The crystals are aligned to amplify the celestial grace during the ceremony." She hesitated, then added more softly, "I want to thank you, Terk. I know this isn't what you came here for." "No," he agreed, "but sometimes we find purpose in unexpected places." Their eyes met, and Terk felt an odd resonance, a hum that seemed to vibrate between them. Zora's eyes widened slightly, suggesting she felt it too. "The grace," she whispered, "it's already responding to you." Before Terk could respond, the doors swung open and a flurry of attendants entered, led by a tall Nevihian with emerald green skin and sharp features. "Cousin," he addressed Zora, barely acknowledging Terk with a curt nod. "The Elders' Council requests your presence immediately. There are concerns about the ceremony." Zora's expression hardened imperceptibly. "Lord Doran, I believe protocol requires you to address my future consort with the proper respect." The emerald-skinned man turned to Terk, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Of course, Ambassador Nassar, forgive my oversight." Terk inclined his head slightly. "No offense taken, Lord Doran." "I'll come to the council," Zora said, turning to Terk. "We'll continue our conversation later." As they left, Terk caught the cold, calculating look Doran cast back at him. It was clear not everyone welcomed this union. He made a mental note to learn more about Zora's cousin and his position within the Nevihian court. The bonding ceremony was unlike anything Terk had experienced. As twilight descended, the crystal pavilion captured the last rays of the twin suns, fractioning them into thousands of luminous strands that encircled the gathered assembly. Queen Selene presided, her once vibrant blue skin now pale and translucent, the effort of standing clearly taxing her strength. Terk stood opposite Zora, both wearing traditional Nevihian ceremonial attire, his adapted to accommodate his human physiology. He'd been briefed extensively on the ritual, but nothing had prepared him for the electric tension that filled the air as Queen Selene began to speak in the ancient Nevihian tongue. The crystals embedded in the pavilion began to pulse with light, responding to her words. As the queen continued, Terk felt a strange warmth spreading through his body, a tingling sensation that concentrated in his chest and fingertips. Following tradition, he and Zora extended their hands, palms facing but not touching. The space between them began to shimmer, particles of light dancing like motes of dust in sunlight. "Now," Queen Selene instructed, switching to standard galactic language, "join your hands and complete the bond." As their palms met, a surge of energy shot through Terk's body. The world around him faded momentarily, replaced by a kaleidoscope of images, memories that weren't his own. He saw Nevi through Zora's eyes, the crystal cities in their full glory, the ancient temples hidden deep in mountain caverns, the secret gardens where the royal family communed with the heart of the planet. When reality reasserted itself, gasps rippled through the assembly. The air around Terk and Zora shimmered with a pearlescent glow, their joined hands the epicenter of a swirling aurora that expanded outward, washing over the gathered crowd. Queen Selene's face showed mingled shock and relief. "The Grace accepts your union," she announced, her voice stronger than before. "Princess Zora and consort Terk, you are now bound in the eyes of Nevi and the cosmos." The celebration that followed was subdued by Earth standards, but vibrant for Nevihian court traditions. Terk found himself the subject of intense curiosity, receiving both warm congratulations and barely concealed skepticism from nobles. Throughout it all, he maintained the diplomatic poise that had served him well in his career, though his mind still reeled from the experience of the bonding. They're watching us, Zora murmured as they performed the traditional first dance, her hand cool against his, waiting to see if the stories are true. What stories? Terk asked, carefully executing the steps he'd been taught. That when our people bond with humans, remarkable things happen. Her violet eyes studied his face. Did you feel it during the ceremony? I saw memories, your memories, I think. She nodded, and I saw yours. Earth is beautiful in its way, so much water, so much green. The dance ended, and they were immediately approached by Lord Doran, whose smile seemed strained. Congratulations, cousin, he said to Zora. The ceremony was impressive, more impressive than many expected. Thank you, Doran, Zora replied coolly. I wonder, Doran continued, his gaze shifting to Terk, how our new human consort will adapt to court life. Earth's diplomatic corps hardly prepares one for the intricacies of Nevihian politics. I'm a quick study, Terk replied evenly. I'm sure you are, Doran's smile tightened. Though some traditions take lifetimes to master, we wouldn't want any unfortunate cultural missteps, especially now that the houses are watching so closely. After Doran moved on, Terk leaned closer to Zora. Your cousin seems concerned about my potential failures. Doran has always been protective of Nevihian traditions, Zora said carefully. As the son of my mother's sister, he was raised to believe he might one day have a claim to the throne if I proved unsuitable. And now I've complicated his ambitions. Yes, her expression softened slightly, but we shouldn't speak of this here, too many ears. As the celebration continued, Terk noticed Queen Selene watching them from her throne, her expression contemplative. When the opportunity arose, he approached her with a respectful bow. Your Majesty, I hope the ceremony met your expectations. The Queen studied him, her gaze penetrating. It exceeded them, Ambassador, or should I say, Consort Terk. The Grace responded to your union more strongly than I dared hope. I felt something, Terk admitted, but I don't understand what it means. It means, the Queen said softly, that you and my daughter have the potential to restore Nevi's balance if you learn to harness what has been awakened. She glanced across the room to where Zora was speaking with a group of elders. My daughter is strong, but she has never had to fight for her position as I have. The challenges ahead will test you both. What challenges specifically? Terk asked, grateful for the Queen's directness. Queen Selene's voice dropped further. The factions have momentarily withdrawn to reassess after witnessing the power of your bonding, but they will return with new strategies. And there are those within these walls who will seek to undermine you both. Like Lord Doran. The Queen's expression revealed nothing. Trust must be earned, Consort Terk, even from me. She straightened slightly. Now you should return to your wife. The night grows late, and tomorrow your real work begins. Later that night, in the private chambers they now shared, Terk and Zora sat across from each other, the awkwardness of their new intimacy hanging between them. So, Terk said eventually, we're married. A smile touched Zora's lips. Bonded, she corrected. It's deeper than marriage as your people understand it. Our energies are connected now. Is that why I can feel? Terk hesitated, unsure how to describe the strange awareness he had of her, a subtle consciousness of her presence that hadn't existed before. You can sense me, she finished for him. Yes, it's part of the bond. It will grow stronger with time. And the light display during the ceremony. Zora moved to a crystal basin in the corner of the room, dipping her fingers into the clear liquid it contained. Come, she beckoned. Terk joined her, looking down at what appeared to be ordinary water. Touch the surface, she instructed. When he did, the liquid immediately began to glow, the light pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. The grace, Zora explained. It flows through you now, through us both. The ceremony didn't just. Morning light filtered through the crystal walls of the royal chambers, casting rainbow patterns across the floor. Terk awoke alone, the space beside him already empty. In the month since their bonding ceremony, he had grown accustomed to Zora's early risings. Her duties as crown princess kept her schedule rigorous, especially with Queen Selene's health declining rapidly. He dressed in the Nevihian-style garments that had been tailored for him, still finding the lightweight, iridescent fabric strange against his skin. As he fastened the ceremonial sash that marked his status as royal consort, he caught sight of his reflection in a crystal panel. The man staring back at him seemed different somehow. There was a subtle luminescence to his skin, a faint glow that hadn't been there before the bonding. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. He opened it to find Jeddah, a young Nevihian with purple skin so deep it was almost indigo, waiting outside. As Zora's personal attendant and confidant since childhood, Jeddah had become Terk's most reliable ally in navigating court life. "Good morning, Consort Terk," she greeted him with a slight bow. "The princess requests your presence in the celestial chamber immediately." "Has something happened?" Terk asked, nodding the tension in Jeddah's posture. "The Elders' Council has called an emergency session," she replied, her voice lowered. "Lord Doran has formally challenged your right to stand as consort." Terk felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. He had been expecting this. Doran's barely concealed hostility had been escalating since the bonding ceremony, especially as news spread throughout Nevi of the powerful manifestation of the grace during the ritual. "Let's not keep them waiting, then," he said, following Jeddah through the winding crystal corridors. The celestial chamber was Nevi's most sacred governmental space, a vast circular room whose domed ceiling depicted the constellation patterns sacred to Nevihian culture. At its center stood a circular platform ringed by 13 crystal thrones. 12 were occupied by the elders, venerable Nevihians whose skin tones spanned from the palest azure to the deepest sapphire. The 13th throne, larger than the others, belonged to Queen Selene, but today it sat empty. Zora stood at the center of the platform, her posture regal despite the obvious tension. Across from her stood Lord Doran, his emerald skin gleaming under the chamber's ethereal light. All eyes turned to Terk as he entered. He felt the weight of their scrutiny as he crossed to stand beside Zora, noting how her tension eased slightly at his presence. "The consort arrives," Doran remarked, his tone just this side of mockery. "How gracious of you to join us, human." "Lord Doran," Elder Fira, the council's senior member, admonished gently, "we will maintain protocol in this chamber." Doran inclined his head in deference, though his eyes remained fixed on Terk with unconcealed contempt. "Now that all parties are present," Elder Fira continued, her aged blue skin almost translucent, "we shall proceed. Lord Doran has raised a formal challenge to the legitimacy of the bonding between Princess Zora and consort Terk Nassar of Earth. The council will hear his petition." Doran stepped forward, addressing the elders with practiced eloquence. "Venerable Council, I come before you out of grave concern for our world and its traditions. While I do not question Princess Zora's intentions, I must question the hasty manner in which this human was elevated to the position of royal consort." He began to pace slowly, his movements deliberate. "Our ancient texts speak of human Nevihian unions, yes, but they also speak of the necessary trials and proofs that must be undertaken. Has consort Terk undergone the 7 trials? Has he proven his worthiness to channel the celestial grace? Or was he merely in the right place at the right time, an Earth diplomat pressed into service for political convenience?" Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Terk felt Zora tense beside him. "The situation demanded swift action," Zora countered, her voice steady. "The grace responded to our bonding more powerfully than to any union in generations. Is that not proof enough?" "A momentary flare is not mastery, cousin," Doran replied smoothly. "The ancient laws are clear. No consort may stand unchallenged without completing the 7 trials. It has been our way since the founding of Nevi." Elder Fira turned her penetrating gaze to Zora. "Princess, is there truth to Lord Doran's claim? Was the traditional trial process circumvented?" Zora hesitated, and Terk realized she was caught in a diplomatic trap. To admit she had bypassed tradition would weaken her position. To deny it would be a lie that could damage her credibility. "May I speak?" Terk asked, stepping forward slightly. Elder Fira nodded her assent. "Honored Council," Terk began, channeling years of diplomatic training, "I stand before you as both a representative of Earth and as consort to Princess Zora. I acknowledge that my elevation to this position came through unconventional means, driven by the urgency of Nevi's situation." He paused, looking each elder in the eye before continuing. "But if there are trials to be faced to prove my worthiness, I welcome them. I did not seek this role, but now that I hold it, I will do everything required to honor it properly." His words seemed to resonate with several of the elders, who nodded appreciatively. Even Doran appeared momentarily taken aback by Terk's willingness to submit to the ancient traditions. "A noble sentiment," Elder Fira acknowledged. But the 7 trials are not formalities, consort Terk. They are dangerous, designed to test both body and spirit to their limits. Many Nevihians have perished in the attempt. And would a human fare any better? Doran interjected, recovering his composure. The trials were designed for our physiology, our connection to the grace. The same ancient texts that established the trials also speak of human Nevihian bonds, Zora countered. They would not prescribe impossible tasks. A tense silence fell over the chamber as the elders exchanged glances. Finally, Elder Fira rose from her throne. The council will deliberate, she announced. Until we reach our decision, all parties are dismissed. You shouldn't have done that, Zora admonished once they were alone in a private antechamber. The 7 trials are not symbolic challenges, Terk. They're life-threatening ordeals that haven't been attempted in generations. What choice did I have? Terk replied. Doran was backed by tradition and law. If I'd refused, it would have undermined your position. Zora's expression softened slightly. Your willingness to face the trials. It was brave, foolish, but brave. Tell me about these trials, Terk said. What exactly am I facing? Zora moved to a crystal panel in the wall, waving her hand over its surface. The panel illuminated, revealing ancient Nevihian script that shifted and transformed until Terk could read it. The 7 trials of the consort, she translated. First, the trial of body, a test of physical endurance in the crystal desert. Second, the trial of mind, a labyrinth that changes according to your deepest fears. Third, the trial of spirit, communion with the ancestral energies. Fourth, the trial of truth, facing your own deceptions. Fifth, the trial of sacrifice, surrendering what you hold most dear. Sixth, the trial of unity, joining your energy completely with your bonded. And seventh, the trial of ascension, claiming the full power of the grace. Terk stared at the ancient text, the magnitude of what he had volunteered for sinking in. And people die during these trials. Yes, Zora said quietly, particularly during the trial of truth and the trial of sacrifice. Those who cannot face their own darkness or who refuse to surrender what they cherish, they don't survive. Before Terk could respond, the door opened and Jeddah entered. Princess, she said urgently, the Queen has summoned you both to her chambers immediately. They found Queen Selene propped up on her bed, her once vibrant blue skin now almost gray, the luminescent patterns barely visible. Despite her weakness, her eyes burned with intensity as they entered. Mother, Zora rushed to her side. You should be resting. There is little time for rest now, the Queen replied, her voice thin but determined. She beckoned Terk closer. You have volunteered for the 7 trials. Yes, Your Majesty, Terk confirmed. Queen Selene studied him with those penetrating eyes that reminded him so much of Zora's. Lord Doran anticipated this. He has been planning this challenge for weeks, manipulating the elders, reminding them of traditions long dormant. Why, Terk asked. What does he gain if I fail? If you fail, the Queen said gravely, the bonding will be nullified. Zora will be required to seek another consort, one approved by the Council. And Doran has already put forth his candidate, his ally Baron Vex of the Northern Reaches. Zora's eyes widened. Vex is loyal to the reactionary factions. He would never support my reforms. Exactly, Queen Selene nodded weakly. With you married to Vex, Doran would effectively control the throne through him. The power of your bonding with Terk frightens Doran. He senses it could threaten his ambitions. Then I can't fail, Terk said simply. The Queen's expression softened slightly. The Council will announce their decision by nightfall. If they approve the trials, you must prepare quickly. Doran will not allow you time to train properly. She reached for Terk's hand, her touch cool and light as air. There is something you should know. The trials will test not just your worthiness as consort, but also the strength of your bond with my daughter. What you face together, even when you appear to stand alone. Terk felt the familiar resonance between him and Zora intensive.